everyone, this is Mona. Welcome to the IMA for Beginners webinar series. This is day 1 of 4 for IMA Basics and Terminology. We will be recording today's webinar, and later today I will send out a link to the video as well as the PowerPoint to those who are currently attending. So if you could do me a favor and go ahead and test out your chat feature. If you can hear me and you can see the presentation, please type the following information: your location, your store format, and your flow type. So for example, Antioch, Illinois, Sears, DC, and DSD. So then if you could type your location, store format, and flow type. And be sure whenever you use the chat to send it to the whole group. If you send it just to the presenter, I actually won't be able to see it as I am presenting. So I will miss your note if you do that.
Where do I find that? I'm just on the website.
There should be a chat box somewhere. It's different depending on how you're accessing it, like how it looks is different. It might be a megaphone or just a little entry box where you can type in information.
I'm just on where it says Vendor University, where it says upcoming training offerings. Do I click on something in there, or?
Did you log into the webinar?
I'm not sure if I did. How do I log into the webinar?
I did send out that information through a calendar notification, and you also received it when you originally signed up for the training. So I would recommend that you check your email, because you do want to be able to see your thing in the webinar. So check your email and get that link to sign in to the actual webinar. It's probably the same place where you found the information for the call-in. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to come back to these responses in just a couple of slides. So I just want to go over some webinar etiquette really quick. If you could please put your phone on mute when you're not speaking, that would be great. We do get a lot of background noise when people leave their mics open. Sometimes it's other people in the office talking, or sometimes it's just static that comes through. It makes it really difficult to hear. So please put your phone on mute when you're not speaking. And if you're not listening to the audio directly from if you are listening to the audio directly from your computer instead of calling in, be sure to mute your computer's microphone, because that will also help to minimize the background noise. If you don't know how to access your computer's microphone options, you can access them by going to Control Panel, Sound, and then Recording tab. Again, Control Panel, Sound, Recording tab. Please wait to audibly ask questions until designated times. I'll have several different instances indicated by the question mark graphic that you see on this page with the blue bubbles. And you can feel free to audibly ask questions at those times. Otherwise, please feel free to submit questions at any time via the chat. I am monitoring that on another screen next to the one I'm and be sure whenever you audibly ask questions, keep them on topic and minimal. We have a lot of content to get through in the hour, so it helps us to make sure that we cover everything that we need to cover. So I did ask you if you could test out the chat feature. I asked for your location, your store format, and your flow type. So looking through here, I do see we have Memphis, Sears, DSD, Indiana.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I opened up my email. I don't see that chat type thing.
Okay. I will have to send you the link later today. I am not able to get into my email while I'm presenting. But I did send that out on Friday with the calendar notification, and you also got it when you registered. So I'll have to send you the link when I send it out to everybody else.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So moving on, we do have Indiana, both DSD, Greenville, South Carolina, New York, Madison, we have Sears, Kmart, DC. Okay, so it looks like we have a pretty wide range of people here, and that's good to know. Seems like from all over the country too. So we have a lot of fall weather in full swing for some people. So that's good. Thanks so much. And again, feel free to use that chat feature to ask questions at any time through the presentation. So if I'm not able to answer your question in the presentation, either I just need more information, or it's really a question for somebody else, or I miss your question through the chat, please email Vendor University and make sure we get answers to all of your questions this week. So just a short bit about me, since you'll be hearing from me a lot these next 4 days. My name is Mona, and I'm the Instructional Design and Training Manager for the Vendor and Item Support team. I own a cat named Tofu and a blind dog named Chloe. I have 3 adorable nephews there in the center. I get to see them next week for 10. I also love to travel. That's me in Slovenia last year. So just a little bit about me as we go through the week. So today we're covering day 1, which is IMA Basics and Terminology. Tomorrow we're going to be going over setting up new items in the new item grid. On Wednesday we're going to be talking about some IMA features, including the Quick Search, Changes tab, some of your different task lists that you may be working with. And on day 4, we're going to cover maintenance in IMA, just some common maintenance updates that you might have to do within your role. Today, we are going to cover IMA terminology, the workflow process of an item, and vendor role ownership. First off, what is IMA? IMA stands for Item Maintenance Application, and basically it's a library of all the information of products that are sold here at SHC, whether it's through Kmart or Sears. If it's going to be sold in our stores, it has to be built within IMA. It is a role-based application, and we're going to be talking more about the different roles during the workflows. But you do start off our process as the vendor for getting the items set up in IMA. IMA is not the order creation system, and it does not feed all of our downstream systems. But we do have a lot of systems at SHC that we work with, depending on the flow type for your items. And it doesn't always feed all of the downstream systems. And there are other systems that are used for creating orders. The information within IMA is used in those other systems to create the orders. There are several methods of entry. For our vendors, we do require data catalog to be used, with a few exceptions. If you are a vendor that does not build uniform or exploding assortments, you can't use data catalog. So if you're building mixed cartons or assorted cartons, you will not be able to sync over that information. Otherwise, we do require our vendors to use data catalog. You actually have to do your first sync over before we will get access to IMA. For internal users, we have the spreadsheet upload process, a system called IMA, the cost model application, as well as manual entry options. For those vendors that do build mixed and assorted cartons, you will have to build your items manually. There are some drawbacks to that because it can take more time to do your item. So we will talk a bit more about that today and some tomorrow as well, as far as what your options are for learning how to do the manual setup. And then finally, we have spin. If an item is going to be exclusively online, it has to be set up in spin, and then it will backfeed into IMA. So those are the different methods of entry for IMA. There's a lot of different type of information that can be put into IMA, and we're going to be covering a lot of this today, so I'm not just going to read off the list. So when an item gets set up in IMA, we may refer to, let's say, a water bottle as an item, just a general piece of merchandise that's being sold in the store. But in IMA, that general piece of merchandise has several pieces or components. And one of those, not to be confusing, is called item. There's also KSN, packages, vendor packs, and core item. And those are the tabs that are really relevant to you as a vendor. So each of those pieces have their own tab in IMA, and then each of those tabs have specific information that you can find about the item. First, we're going to talk about the item tab. The item describes the business unit that your product is assigned to. So think of this as the SHC hierarchy with the division and category. And some of you I know are Sears, and it can get a little bit confusing because there's an SHC hierarchy and there's also a Sears hierarchy. So most of the time, probably about 95% of the time, that division number for your Sears division and your SHC division are different. So if you are in communication with your buying team and you're getting confused when they keep referring to a division and it's not lining up for you, you might want to ask them if they're referring to the Sears division or the SHC to clarify, because that can get very confusing. But on the item tab, you will find the SHC hierarchy. So that's where you'll find the SHC division, as well as the category and the subcategory. An item shares the same store location. So if you walk into a store and you go down an aisle and you turn and you look at a product on the shelf, everything that's on an item in IMA shares that same exact shelf location. An item also shares the same selling price or retail. So it's sold for the same exact amount if it's on an item. That item number is 9 digits. It's usually identical to the KSN number. For Sears items, it should always be identical to that KSN number. And for Kmart items, that item number can be different due to a process called linking. Now, linking doesn't have anything to do on the vendor side. So I know sometimes we do get questions from vendors about linking, and typically we find your definition of linking that you have in your head is different than the actual process of linking that we do in IMA. So when an item gets linked, it could be for a couple of reasons. It could be that an item is going to be discontinued and another item is going to come in and basically take the place of that discontinued item. So they will link that KSN to the existing item number so that it goes to the same shelf location as that previous KSN item. Also, it will reflect the same on our reporting. Another reason that an item could be linked is if it's a bonus item. So if we have a bottle of shampoo that we're selling, and then we get a selection of that same bottle of shampoo, but it has the bonus 20% extra for free, or it has a bonus like bottle of lotion attached to it or sunscreen. All we care about is how many bottles of shampoo we're selling. We don't really care about how many of the bonus items. So they will actually link those bonus items to the original items so that they go to the same shelf location in the stores. Also, linking is strictly an inventory-owned process. So any linking that's actually done in IMA has to be done by inventory. So you should never be trying to actually link anything in the system yourself. So as an example, we have water bottles. There's your item number, and you see the division is sporting goods, the category is accessories, the subcategory is water bottles. So we know when we go into a store, we're going to be able to find this item in the sporting goods department with all of the other sporting goods accessories, specifically with all of the other water bottles. So that's how the hierarchy tells you where it's located inside of a store. So there are several types of items that can be built in IMA, but the two most commonly built ones are going to be typicals and exploding assortments. So a typical can also be referred to as an each, or it can also be referred to as a member. Basically, it's what's rung up at the register. So as an example, we have the 6-pack of soda because it's actually rung up as a 6-pack. There's a bottle of shampoo, or there's a single shirt. Exploding assortment is just an assortment of items. So the example we have here is for apparel. That's 1 small, 2 medium larges, and 1 extra large. Those are it's not rung up at the register as an assortment. Each of those typicals would be rung up individually at the register. You may also see this referred to as parent and children relationship, with the exploding assortment being a parent, and then the typicals being the children, because all the typicals have to go into the exploding assortment. There are a few other types of items that can be built in IMA. These are not built as commonly, and most likely you do use those typicals or exploding assortment items. There's a supply fixture. If it's going to be in our stores, we have to have it built in IMA so we can order it. There's a class control item, and the best example of this would be for curtains. Because with curtains, you have such a wide range of lengths and widths that can be bought in the store. And instead of creating a different item number for every single one of those, they're actually placed in the same item number as a class control item. We also have supply items, so like cleaning supplies such as paper towels or the plastic bags that you get at the register. Those would all be built as supply items. And then finally, we do have installation agreements and protection agreements. Now, these are more for like large appliances, like refrigerators or stove tops. They have a flag on the items for installation and protection, but the installation and protection agreements also have to be built as items so they can be rung up at the register in the store. So there are several relevant fields for vendors on the item tab. You have your item type, you have your SHC hierarchy, the division category and subcategory, your EAS tag required indicator, and your default selling price, which is typically updated by the merchant, although some vendors, they try to enter this, but we don't usually sell items for the MSRP, so that usually gets updated by the merchant in the merchant role. So this is what the item tab looks like. If you were to do a quick search for an item and click item tab up here at the top, this is what you would see. Here you can see your item type. This is a typical item. In this box you have your division and category and subcategory, your SHC hierarchy. Below that you have your EAS tag required indicator. Now some people are familiar with what this is and some are not. But basically, think of if you're at like a nice clothing store, you might have a security tag on the clothes, or if you have an expensive drill, there might be some sort of security tag for the drill. That's your EAS tag required indicator. And I believe if someone's phone is going off, if you could be sure to mute your phone, that would be great. Otherwise, I'm going to mute everybody so that this doesn't continue. Give me 1 second. That's it first.
All participants are now in listen-only mode.
Okay. Sorry I had to do that. I really don't like muting everybody. I like everybody to be able to audibly ask questions when they can. But if there's too much background noise or if the phone keeps ringing, I just went ahead and did that because it can get distracting, and I have a hard time keeping my focus too when there's a lot of background noise. So I will be sure to unmute it at the very end. In the meantime, please feel free to use the chat for questions. So the EAS tag required indicator is your security tag. And the flag for this, it's located on the item tab as well as the vendor pack tab. So when you're doing your new item grid setup, which I'm going to walk you through tomorrow, you will see that on the grid more than once, and that's why. It's because it's located in. And then over on the right side of the screen, we have your default selling price. So again, I know vendors often enter the MSRP, but this usually gets updated by the merchant once it gets to the merchant role. So any questions so far about the item tab? Okay. We'll go on to the KSN then. And the KSN stands for Key Stock Number, and it's a 9-digit number assigned by IMA during initial creation process. And it's completely random. There's no rhyme or reason to the number. It does include this dash and check digit at the end. And one of the things that you'll notice in IMA is if you do a quick search for a KSN, you actually have to leave off that dash and check digit. If you leave those on, then you're not going to get back any search results. So that is required at the store level, and I think there's a couple of other systems that dash and check digit is required for. But in IMA, you can leave that dash and check digit off. So a KSN may identify the style, size, color, fabric, or information on merchandising strategies. There's not a lot on the KSN that you have to do. However, it's good to understand what the KSN is because it's used primarily by inventory to monitor sales and order creation. So one of the call-ups I want to give to you is that here internally, SHC references the KSN more often than the UPC when referring to items because it is used to track sales and ordering. So if you're having some issues with communication with your buying team or inventory team, one of the things you might consider is thinking of it in terms of the KSN instead of the UPC. Sometimes that can clear up some of that communication. I give the same call out to our internal users, the fact that they might want to try referring to the item with UPC. So I kind of give that call out to both sides of the house. So again, internally we usually refer to items using the KSN rather than the UPC. So all that you really care about on the KSN tab is that KSN number and the KSN description. And here on the KSN tab, you will always see this KSN number right up here at the top of the page. And then your KSN description is located right here. So any questions about the KSN tab? Okay, I see Pat's asking a question. When I'm entering a style number or style, the KSN will already be created. Yeah, when you sync over, do you sync over your items, Pat? If you sync over your items, when your UPCs get synced over, they automatically get a KSN number added or connected to those UPCs. You don't have to create a KSN number. It's created automatically by IMA. I don't know if that answers your question. The UPCs to the merchant. Hold on one second. Do you have your, I'm going to unmute your mic so, because it would be easier for me to talk chat. So give me 1 second.
All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
Okay, hey Pat. So
Hi.
you said you sent your UPCs to your merchant, but you didn't receive any KSN notification. So
Yes.
even though you send your UPCs to your merchant, you still have to actually create your items in IMA. So do you use data sync?
No, I enter them manually.
Okay, so you build your items manually.
Yeah.
Okay, whenever you build your items manually and you enter those UPCs, then your KSN gets automatically created by IMA and attached. You're not going to necessarily receive a list of KSNs from your merchant, although some merchants will provide that if you ask. But typically when you're doing your item setup, you want to record that KSN down before you approve it through your role.
Okay, so if I do data sync, what are you going to go through that at the training? How to do data sync?
Yes, tomorrow we are covering the new item grid, which involves data sync. So I'll be talking a bit more about that as we go through and I talk about the different types of packages today.
Okay, so if I was to do it manually, when I enter the UPC, the KSN would be generated automatically after I finish the style?
Yeah, as soon as you start the process and you enter in your UPC and you go through some of the prompts for creating it manually, IMA is going to create that KSN. And let me go back to the PowerPoint for a second. So here on this this page, when you're going through and creating it manually, you always see the KSN number at the top of the page, no matter which tab you're on. So you'll be able to see that KSN number.
All right.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions about the KSN? Okay, I'm going to try leaving the mic open again. Hopefully no one's phone goes off again. Again, if you could remember to mute your mics when you're not speaking, that would really be helpful too. All right, so we're going to go on to the Packages tab.
Hey, Mona. Hi, this is Rochelle. I don't think you saw my message. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, if you're sending a chat message, be sure to send it to the whole group, because if you just send it to the host,
Yeah, she's just sending it to me.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just now saw it. Same style with the same UPC selected by two separate KSNs. It depends on what type of carton you're building. Like, what's your carton setup like?
Basically, I'm a bit confused because we're from the jewelry business, and it's going to be diamond pendants and diamond earrings.
Okay.
So I have the same diamond pendant style selected by both Sears and Kmart. So what would you recommend?
I need more information as far as the typical setup with cartons. So this might be something we take offline because I need more information, like
Sure.
screenshots, or I might have to actually reach out to your business. There's some things where it's very specific to each business. So we're covering kind of the basics across the board, but each person's business can be a little bit unique. So sometimes you do have to reach out to your merchants and inventory teams. But if you can email vendoruniversity@searshc.com, and if you could provide any screenshots or KSN numbers, that would help me out to be able to do some research and dig into that and try to come up with an answer for you.
Sure. Thanks so much.
No problem. Okay. So we're going to go on to packages. So with your packages, they contain information on boxes or shipments of product sent to an SHC store. And it identifies a lot of information that's specific to you as the vendor, such as dimensions and weights, brand, hazard information, country of origin, HTS code, fabric, metal content. There are several types of packages that you could be creating in IMA. You have each packages. You also have cartons, and there's several types of cartons. And you also have pallets, and there's two different types of pallets. So first we're going to talk about the each package. So each item has to have a corresponding each package. And carton and pallet creation is dependent on each packages. So you have to have those each packages built in order to have anything to put into your carton and pallets. And each packages get the retail marking number, or the RG10, or the UPC. It's that 12-digit number. Whereas cartons get the shipping marking number, which is the 14-digit number. So some of the carton types that you can create in IMA include the each carton, the uniform carton, and exploding assortment carton. Those are your three most common kinds: each carton, uniform carton, exploding assortment carton. So less commonly, we do have a mixed or assorted carton, and we also have a sellable carton. So your each carton, they're usually really large items, such as the refrigerator, or a washer and dryer, or a bicycle. Basically, they are shipped in the same box that they're being sold in. So since they're being shipped in the same box they're being sold in, they have to have both that retail marking number and the shipping marking number. The shipping marking number helps us to know what to do with the item, whereas the retail marking number is required at the store level to ring up properly at the register. For a uniform carton, that's going to be multiple eaches in specific quantities. So you have 24 units of the same exact shirt, or it could be 12 units of water bottles, but it's the same item in specific quantities. And next we have an exploding assortment carton, and that consists of each packages in an assortment. So in the example, we have 2 small, 4 medium, and 4 large shirts. Each of those have their own retail marking number because they need to be rung up at the register, and then they go into the carton, and that carton is going to have your shipping marking number. And I just got a question from Pat. Will I sell garments with specific ratios? Which category will I be in? Most likely you're going to be an exploding assortment carton. But you should get some information from your buying teams, and with that, especially if you're a new vendor, you should be told what type of cartons you'll be building for that business.
Well, I'm not a new vendor. We've been selling to Kmart for a while now. It's just that I've been put into a position where I have to handle the IMA, so that's why I'm doing the training. In regards to the exploding assortment carton, we sell in a 1-2-2-1 ratio, which is small to extra large. And so with this shipping marking number, is that supplied to me by Kmart because that's what we're selling to, or do I have to give them one?
No, you have to provide the shipping marking number.
Okay, So how do I provide a shipping marking number in that sense?
That's something that comes from your company. So it's something that is owned by the vendor. Sometimes if it's a uniform carton, they'll just add the 2 zeros in front of the UPC for that individual item, but it's not really encouraged. So that's something that you should be talking to people at your own company, your own business, by you.
Okay.
So, but yeah, most likely you do the exploding assortment carton. There is one other option that you might be doing, but definitely reach out to your buying team and confirm which type of carton you should be building. Because if you build it incorrectly, you're going to have to build it again. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
So in the system, you can see this is what an exploding assortment carton looks like. You have different KSNs. Each KSN has a unique UPC, and then there is a specific quantity for each of the UPCs. Now, mixed and assorted cartons are a little bit different. They are typically only for Kmart, but to be more specifically, they're for allocation. So technically, if you have a Sears item that's being shipped through allocation, you could technically build a mixed or assorted carton. It's just not done very often. So make sure that that's what your buying team actually wants you to do. Also to note that the mixed and assorted cartons cannot be data synced. They have to be built manually. So that's where you have to build them one by one. And tomorrow we're going to be covering how to work new items through the new item grid. And specifically that's for data sync vendors because most of our vendors are data sync. We are looking at setting up a new webinar, like reoccurring. I'm not sure if it's going to be every month or every other month, specifically for vendors that have to build cartons manually, to walk through those manual build processes. So I'm hoping to get the first one launched in December. So if you do build items manually, if you build mixed cartons, you build assorted cartons, be on the lookout because we will be adding additional webinars for the manual build process. Otherwise, if you need help in the meantime, please reach out to the IMA Help Desk. It's imahelp@searshc.com, and they will help you walk through that process as well. So for a mixed carton, it's 1 KSN with fixed quantities of multiple UPCs, whereas an assorted carton is 1 KSN with unknown quantities of multiple UPCs. And I'm going to explain that a little bit further because I know that one sentence doesn't really, it's hard to picture until you see a visual. So for a mixed carton, you would have 24 6-ounce bottles of bubble bath, 8 peach, 8 vanilla, and 8 orange. So in the system, you would see a single KSN. It's the same KSN all the way down. And there are multiple UPCs on that single KSN. But each UPC does have a specific quantity. So at the inventory level, we do not see how many of each of the scents that we're selling. We just see how many of the bottles of bubble bath we're selling. So they wouldn't know how many peach that they're selling, how many vanilla they're selling, how many orange. They would just know they're selling, or they've sold 18 bottles of bubble bath so far. Now for an assorted carton, this is used a lot in toys. Mixed can also be used in toys, and toys is kind of the business that probably uses these the most. There's a few other businesses that can use these. I think jewelry might sometimes use mixed or assorted cartons, but they also use exploding assortment cartons. So again, if you're not sure what type of carton you should be building, please reach out to your merchant and inventory analyst to see how your business needs to be setting up their items. So with toys, an example would be Matchbox cars or beach balls, or let's say figurines, let's say Ninja Turtle figurines. With an assorted carton, you can see that there is a single KSN, and there's multiple multiple UPCs for that single KSN, but each quantity is blank. We do see a total eaches. So we know we're going to get a total of 12 Ninja Turtle figurines. We don't know how many of each turtle we're going to get. We don't know how many splinters we're going to get. We don't know how many shredders we're going to get. We just know we're going to get a total of 12. Basically, the vendor would decide how many of each of those different figurines to send in the carton to total 12. So that would be an assorted carton. And Pat is asking if this is considered a master carton KSN. That's not an actual term. Sometimes you'll find that there's different terminology that people will kind of apply to something, and that terminology doesn't always exist. A master carton KSN doesn't actually, it's not a term that we have. So if someone's using that term that's on your buying or inventory team, I would ask them for more detail as to what they mean, because it's not an actual term in IMA.
Okay, well, we get an example from our EDI that we receive. On the EDI, it has one KSN number, and then that KSN number has multiple UPCs and multiple KSNs for each size.
Multiple KSNs for each size, or multiple UPCs? Oh, so you have a KSN, and then you have
UPC, which corresponds to how many of each size.
That sounds, so there's more than one KSN, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So for each size that we receive.
That sounds like an exploding assortment carton. Because with an exploding assortment carton, let me go back to that page. Here, so this exploding assortment carton itself will have a KSN number.
Yes.
And then there's other KSN numbers down here. These are your eaches. And each of those KSN numbers have a UPC as well.
Yes.
So it sounds like you're describing an exploding assortment carton.
Okay. So the exploding assortment carton is pretty much what I'm entering?
That's what it sounds like. It never hurts to double check with your buying team.
Okay.
Again, every business can be different. And you could do exploding assortment cartons in addition to another type. So some businesses do use multiple carton types.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Sorry for asking so many questions.
No, that's okay. Okay, so the last type of carton that I'm going to go over is a retail carton. This is also known as a sellable carton. And this is basically when the customer can either buy the whole carton or they can open up that carton and buy the individual units. And this is done most often with oil or cigarettes. So we have the each packages, we had each cartons, and, we had each packages, we had carton packages, there we go, and we also have pallet packages. And there's two types of pallet packages. You have a uniform pallet or an exploding assortment pallet. Just like with the mixed and assorted cartons, this is typically Kmart only, or rather items that are going through allocation. So you could technically have a Sears item that's going through allocation being built as a pallet in the system. However, that doesn't mean that if you have a Sears rim item that you can't send it as a pallet. It just means that you can't build it in the system as a pallet. So a uniform pallet is basically like a uniform carton, and an exploding assortment pallet is basically like an exploding assortment carton. So if you have Sears rim items and they need to be built as pallets, you can't build them in the system as a pallet. So you would build it as a uniform carton, and then you would just throw it on a pallet when you go to ship it. Or if it's an exploding assortment, you would build it as an exploding assortment carton and then put it on a pallet before you ship it, if you're Sears rim. So example of a uniform pallet could be bleach, potting soil, or fertilizer. Example for an exploding assortment pallet would be back-to-school pallet containing notebooks, pencils, rulers, and highlighters, or children's assorted size underwear. Like I said, it's just like an exploding assortment carton. So there are several fields relevant to the vendor on the Packages tab. You own most of the content on this tab. You have your package type, your retail shipping marking number, the marking number format, dimensions and weights, hazardous information, HTS codes, harmonized tariff schedule codes, country of origin, fabric metal content, and package configuration. So looking here at the package tab, this is an example of an each package. So up at the top, you see your package type. Below that, you see the UPC, and this indicates it's the 12-digit number. Down further, you see an area for dimensions, and then over to the right of that, you see an area for weights. We're going to talk about dimensions and weights a little bit more in the next few slides. So below your weights, you see your hazardous information. So it's really important that you do answer this hazardous information correctly. Otherwise, it could potentially have disastrous results. So for example, a couple of years ago, there was an item that was being sent on an airplane that should not have been on the airplane at all. It was some sort of propane for or gas for camping. And the hazardous questions were not answered correctly for it. So it ended up on the airplane. It ended up starting a fire. Thankfully, they were able to contain it, and it didn't cause the plane to crash, or it didn't cause injury to anybody, but that was potentially really disastrous. So it's very, very, very important that you answer these hazardous questions correctly so that things are being stored properly, things are being shipped properly. So you will do that during the new item setup process. We're going to go over that tomorrow. But just be sure you are answering those correctly. And if you don't know the answer, please talk to somebody at your company to find out how you can find those answers. Okay? Below that, you have your HTS codes. So again, that's Harmonized Tariff Schedule codes. And what that is if your product gets picked up from your warehouse and is on the truck, and it's the truck driver is driving along and he gets stopped by the police and gets pulled over, and they may ask him to produce a list of everything that's in his truck. And that list is going to be comprised of the HTS code that you populated in IMA. So it's important to try to select an answer that's closest to what the product actually is. It can be difficult sometimes to find an exact match, so just find the best answer that you can find for the HTS code. But that's what the HTS code is for. Below that, you will see your country of origin, and you will also see your fabric metal content. So with your country of origin, call out I want to give. If you only put U.S. down here for country of origin, please be sure it's actually completely made in the U.S. because there's a lot of people who only want to purchase items that are 100% American made. So if you are putting that it is American made and it's actually part of it's made in a different country, that can really cause some trust issues between your product and the customer. Please make sure that that is accurate. And you can add more than one country. I will be showing you that tomorrow in the grid, but you can add as many countries as you need. Because I know sometimes we've had vendors where part of the product is made, let's say, in India, and the other part of the product is made in China. So you can actually add both of those. And then your fabric metal content. This isn't applicable to everyone. It depends on what your product is and the business you're working in. But you enter basically you select the fabric or the metal content, and then you enter the percentage of the makeup for your product. So this is an example of an exploding assortment carton. So here we can see all of the members that belong to this carton. We see their KSNs and their UPCs, as well as their quantity. If you work in something like apparel or something with sizes, and you're looking at this to review, be aware that it doesn't always put these in sequential order. So here we have the large first, and then the extra large, and then the small, and then the medium. So if you're just looking at the quantity, you want to make sure that it actually matches up correctly to either that description or your UPC. And then here you will see that there's dimensions and weights for your carton as well as for your eaches. Hold on just 1 second, I'm going to get some water. Okay, sorry, my mouth gets really dry from talking so much. So this is dimensions and weights guidelines. Dimensions and weights have to align with the GS1 standards for cube measurement. So they calculate the cube by depth, width times height. So that's done at both the each and the carton level. So in this example, if you have an each and the dimensions for that each is 5 by 4 by 2, then the cube for that each would be 40. And then let's say that each weight is 5 pounds. So here we have an example of a 2-pack where each dimension, the cube value for that each dimensions is 40. So if you have a 2-pack, then the cube value would be 80, because it has to be at minimum 40 times the quantity, so 40 times 2. So if you tried to enter in dimensions for your carton and the cube was less than 80 or grossly larger, then it would result in an error. So if it was 79 or 500, it would result in an error. We do give quite a pretty decent allowance for going over the cube, because we do know that you don't use customized boxes for every order. You probably have a standard set of boxes that you use, so there will be some extra space in there. You might put in some packaging material. So we do allow for give an allowance for it to be greater than the minimum of the cube sum, but it does at least have to be that. And then your each weight, if the weight of that individual unit was 5 pounds and there's the 2-pack, then the carton weight would be 10 pounds. It's really, really important that the carton dimensions is correct, because that lets us know how much space it's going to take up on the truck. So if the carton dimensions is not correct, there could be potential charges. So for example, if we schedule a truck and we're expecting you to take up the entire truck with your product, and you load up the truck and it only takes up half of that space, we could have potentially scheduled for an additional stop. Or if you were only supposed to take up half the truck and you end up taking up the entire truck, then that's going to throw off the pickup for the other company that we're picking up. There are some exemptions, and we do have exemption rules that you can, it's a flag that you can mark during the item setup. And so basically, if you have items that are compressed, stacked, or nested, or if you have a display pack within the shipper. So if you have, let's say if you have chairs and you can stack the chairs on top of each other, or if you have pillows in a carton, when you put the pillows in, they can be compressed, so they can take up less space than what the minimum cube sum value would be. So those are examples where you could use the dimension exception indicator. Now for weight, there are no exemptions. The carton weight has to always align with your each's sum weight. So if the exemption rules apply, you're going to change the dimension exception indicator flag to Y on in-process items. And you only need to do that at the UPC or each level. You don't have to do that for your cartons. So we are going to go into this more. I'm going to show you how to do it during the IMA maintenance session, and I'll also show you where the flag is tomorrow during the new item setup session. So any questions about packages? I know there's a lot of information that we covered in packages. So do you have any questions about packages? Okay, we're going to go on to vendor packs then. So an item cannot be ordered without a vendor pack. And the vendor pack identifies a lot of vendor-specific information. So basically, as a vendor, most of the information that you are completing is going to be on your Packages tab and your Vendor Pack tab. So for instance, on the Vendor Pack tab, you have to complete your cost and your vendor stock number. You have to select ship points. So some of the relevant fields for you as a vendor, you have your flow type, primary store format or ownership code, your shipping package, your total eaches per enter and number of enters, your cost, vendor stock number and description, your EAS tag indicator. Again, that one's also on the item tab, so you want to make sure that those match. You also have your California Prop 65 questions and your ship points. So this is what the Vendor Pack tab looks like. Up at the very top, you will see your flow type. And then over to the left, you will see your ownership code. Now, I mentioned before that you should be getting some information from your buying and inventory teams when you start your item setup, especially if you do not always do the same setup every single time, or if you're a new vendor. And even if you're just new to the role and you're not sure how it's supposed to be set up, please feel free to reach out to your merchant and inventory. But your flow type is one of the pieces of information you should be getting from them, as well as your format if you do build for both Sears and Kmart. You should also be getting something with the cost that you guys agreed upon. So if you're not getting that information, please reach out to them. And it could be in an email, or it could be an Excel file, such as like a buy sheet or a wing. But we'll be going over some of that more tomorrow as we go through the new item setup process and discuss where you have to select different. So below the ownership code, you can see the shipping package details. And this is basically the package that this vendor pack refers back to. Further down, you can see your cost, your vendor stock number and description, and your EAS tag and required indicator. Now to the right, you have your California Prop 65 questions. So most of you are probably aware of the California Prop 65 questions. But basically, they are a bit more particular about some of the makeup of items that are sold in California. And so they might require an additional warning depending on what your items contain. So it's asking about the California Prop 65 chemicals. It's also asking if there's a warning label on the package. Now, if you scroll further down the screen, if you are shipping, well, there's a few different options, but let's say you're shipping DC, you will see ship points down here. And this is where we are coming to pick up the item from you to take to our DC locations here in the very far left. But in the red is where the ship points are. So inners and eaches. Inners are internal cartons within a carton. And they may be broken down in the DC, and then the inners shipped to different stores. So in this example, oh, sorry, I just got a question that I didn't notice. Pat was asking if the stock number and the style number are the same. That's completely up to you. You own the stock number and the style number. Sometimes, a lot of times, they're used interchangeably. So that's up to you as the vendor. Okay. So in this example, you have your carton here, and then you have 3 inners. So there are boxes that are going inside of your carton. And then you have the packages of Tylenol. We have 6 packages of Tylenol going into each inner. So in this example, your total eaches would be 18, because your eaches are what's being sold, so Tylenol. And then the eaches per inner is 6, because there's 6 going into each inner. And then the number of inners is 3. So there's 3 of the internal boxes. Now, many of you would just ship your item like this, where you just throw all of your items into one carton, and you don't use inners. So in that example, your total eaches would be 18, and the eaches per inner is 1, because these are now being counted as your inners. So each of these are an inner, so there's 1. And then the number of inners is 18. Let's say if you had 10, then the total eaches would be 10. The eaches per inner would be 1, and the number of inners would then be 10. So my merchant or inventory analyst has requested that I create a new vendor pack for an existing item. Why would I need to create a new vendor pack? And I'm going to try to get through these quickly because I just realized we're pretty tight on time. But basically, when you have an operational item, your merchant or inventory analyst may ask you to create additional vendor packs. So some of the reasons they could do that is if you have a new flow type, if you've been shipping BC and you need to start shipping BSD. Additional store format, you've been doing Sears, and now they also want to sell it in Kmart. If it's a different vendor, so if one vendor has been supplying an item for a while and they're going to discontinue supplying it, and another vendor is going to come in and start supplying that same exact item. If you have a change in carton configurations or there's a new each member, those kind of go along together, but you would need new vendor packs. Or if there's more than one cost. If you've been shipping something to the 48 continental states and now we want to start sending it to Puerto Rico, it's probably going to cost more to have that go to Puerto Rico, so we would need an additional pack for that additional cost. So any questions for vendor packs? I know we're really tight on time, so I'm going to move on pretty quickly here. Okay. So core item. So this is only for Sears. It's required for all items going through a Sears point of sale. Now you don't have to do anything on the core item tab. However, if you're supplying product for Sears, you will need that core item number because you will be ticketing your items with it. And that core item number consists of the 3-digit division and then a dash and a 4 or 5-digit item number. So some of the items may also be skewed. So if an item is skewed, you may also have to include that skew on your ticketing. And if items are not ticketed correctly, the item may not ring up at the register correctly. So it's really important that the ticketing is correct. So you should be getting that information either from your merchant or you can look it up in IMA by doing a quick search for the UPC, and then you can find the core item number. So I'm going to go ahead and move on so I can try to cover workflow really quickly before we run out of time. For workflow and ownership, like I said, IMA is a role-based system, and you as the vendor do start off that process. You initiate the item setup in IMA. Typically, you will utilize data sync for your data sync provider to sync over that information, and then you work those synced items in the new item grid. Some of you may be setting these up manually depending on what type of cartons you do build. After you, it goes to the merchant role where they validate some of your entries. They add some merchant or IST specific fields. They create the core item number in the merchant role. And then it moves on to inventory analyst. And they will validate some vital information such as the tier group, and they also add their own inventory specific fields. From them, it goes to supply chain, and then it goes to some automated processes, hold state, where a set of checks is run on the item, and bridging. If it's a Kmart item, it's going to go through bridging very quickly and go to operational. If it is a Sears item, it is during that bridging where the information from that core tab gets sent to the core system. So once an item is operational, you can actually access, we will be able to access that item through our ordering systems. Now there is a short video that you can watch that goes over the workflow process. I will be sending this PowerPoint out later today, so feel free to come back and click the link for that video to watch the workflow process in more detail. And finally, vendor field responsibilities. These are the vendor fields that are system required. Now, depending on your relationship with your merchant, you may be doing a few additional fields for the business work in because each business can be different. Some of you may be adding some attributes in the KSN tab. Most vendors don't, but there are some that do. Some of you, I know Team Apparel vendors typically add the can-carry group, but that's not normally done by other businesses. So while these are the system-required attributes, sometimes those required fields can be different based upon your business and the merchants that you work with. So I'm not going to read off every single one of these. But for now, do you have any other questions? I know we ran over time a little bit, and I do apologize about that. Little delay getting started. So anybody have any questions at all?
Can the ship from location be changed manually, or do we have to go through a certain process to do that?
The ship from location. Do you mean your ship point?
Yes.
Yes, that can be updated during, well, it has to be selected actually during the new item setup. And then once it becomes operational, if you need to do a change request, you can do a change request. We'll be covering that on day 4, the maintenance session.
All right.
And Mariella is asking if I will be sending the presentation. Yes, I will. Later today, I'll be sending the presentation as well as a link to the video. So if you have any questions that I wasn't able to answer, or you have some questions where I need some more detail to be able to really dig into it, please email vendoruniversity@searshc.com. And real quick, Ebony is asking if, you'll be able to print out the PowerPoint when I do send it. It'll be in a PDF format. So I'm going to stay on the line for another 5 or 10 minutes, however long you guys need, in case you have some additional questions. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.